I didn't know my life would split into a before and an after because of a single sentence spoken in my own kitchen. Your mom's older kids are part of her past. My children are the future. When Nathan said that to me, I felt something inside my chest shift. Not crack, not explode, just shift, like a door closing quietly but permanently. I was standing by the kitchen counter, still holding a glass of water I hadn't even taken a sip from. The house I helped pay for. The electricity bill with my name on it. The groceries in the fridge that I had bought 3 days earlier. And this man, who didn't pay $1 toward that roof, was telling me I didn't belong in my own home. I am 22 years old. I moved back in with my mother because she said she needed help. She told me she was struggling financially. She told me it would only be temporary. 6 months, maybe less. 8 months later, I was funding half the house while being erased from it. Erased from Thanksgiving. Erased from family photos. Erased from conversations happening right in front of me. I wasn't jealous of his children. I wasn't competing with them. I just wanted to not feel invisible. But when he told me I was the past, something inside me stopped trying to be polite. Because the truth is, I wasn't just hurt. I was humiliated. And the worst part? My mother stood there, and she didn't defend me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about blending families. It was about replacement. And I had to decide, would I keep shrinking to make room for someone else's comfort? Or would I finally stand up in the house I was helping pay for? That was the day everything changed. And I didn't know yet how far it would go. Before Nathan ever looked at me like I was inconvenient furniture, my mother and I were not perfect, but we were a team. My mom, Diane, is 48. The kind of woman who always looks like she's thinking about 3 problems at once. Bills, groceries, Lily's homework, the broken faucet she keeps meaning to fix. She used to laugh more when my dad was alive. After he died 7 years ago from kidney disease, that laughter became rare, like it cost her something. I was 15 when we lost him. I remember the hospital smell, the plastic chairs, the way my mom tried to be strong and still looked like she could fall apart if someone breathed too hard near her. Dad's death didn't just take him. It took the steady center of our home, too. We were 3 kids then. My older brother, Ben, he's 29 now, me, and my little sister, Lily, who was only 7 at the time and clung to Mom's sleeve like she was afraid Mom would disappear too. For years after, Mom did what she always did when life hit her. She kept moving, kept working, kept functioning. On the outside, she looked like she was handling it. On the inside, grief sat in the corners of our house like dust, quiet, everywhere, impossible to fully clean. Then she met Nathan. Nathan is 51. He had lost his wife 5 years ago to cancer. That was the first thing Mom told me, like it was proof he understood pain. He's been through it too, she said once, voice soft. He gets it. At first, I wanted to be happy for her. I did. I wanted her to feel wanted again, not just needed. Nathan came with 3 kids. Mason, 24. Tyler, 19. Claire, 16. When Mom first started seeing him, she'd get dressed up in a way I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Lipstick, earrings, perfume. Little things that said, I'm still a woman, not just a mother who survives. And I didn't judge her for that. But then, 8 months ago, she called me after I'd already been living on my own. Her voice sounded tight, careful, like she was walking on glass. Honey, she said, I need to ask you something, and I hate that I have to. She told me expenses were getting too high. Rent, utilities, food. She said she was falling behind and didn't want to admit it to anyone. I just need help until I get back on my feet, she promised. 6 months, tops. I moved back because she was my mom. Because I pictured her alone at the kitchen table, staring at bills, trying not to cry. Because guilt has a way of sounding like love when it comes from family. I work as a medical receptionist. After taxes, I take home about $2,400 a month. Every month, I transferred Mom $850 for rent and $200 for utilities. I also bought groceries every other week, around $300. I watched my savings shrink, watched my independence fold up neatly like clothes shoved into a drawer. I told myself it was temporary. But as soon as I moved in, I noticed something. Nathan wasn't just dating my mother. Nathan was already acting like he belonged. He was at our house constantly, 4 days a week, sometimes more. Weekends, too. His kids would come with him. They ate the food I bought. They left their stuff in the living room like they owned the place. And the strangest part? They didn't talk to me. They didn't talk to Ben either when he visited. It wasn't even open hostility. It was worse. It was like we were air. And at first I tried. I smiled. I said hello. I made room in the kitchen. I asked Claire once if she liked her school. She blinked at me, like she hadn't expected me to speak. Then she said, flat and brief, "Excuse me," and reached past me for the fridge. That was the longest conversation we had in months. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, the house began to feel like it was dividing into two worlds. Nathan, Mom, Lily, their world, and me, standing off to the side, paying half the bills in silence. I kept telling myself blending takes time, but deep down I knew something darker. This wasn't blending. This was replacement. The first time I realized something was truly wrong wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no slammed doors, just a sentence from my little sister. It was early November. I was in the kitchen making pasta after work, still in my scrubs, hair tied back, exhaustion sitting heavy behind my eyes. Lily came in from school, dropped her backpack on the chair, and started talking about how excited she was. "I can't believe we're doing 6 dates in 10 days, she said, grinning. I paused mid-stir. 6 dates? She looked at me like I had missed something obvious. For Thanksgiving, the road trip. The spoon slipped in my hand and hit the side of the pot. "What road trip?" She frowned. "Mom and Nathan planned it. We're going to the Grand Canyon in Colorado and—" She stopped. "Wait, you knew, right?" The silence between us thickened. "No," I said slowly. "I didn't." I called Ben immediately. He didn't know either. That evening when Mom got home, I didn't accuse her. I didn't explode. I asked calmly, "Why didn't you tell us about the Thanksgiving trip?" She froze for half a second. "Oh," she said lightly. "I thought I did." "You didn't." She shifted her purse from one shoulder to the other. It must have slipped my mind. Slipped her mind. A 10-day trip. Across 6 states. Leaving in 5 days. I asked when they were leaving. "In 5 days," she said, almost apologetically. I laughed once, not because it was funny. Even if I wanted to go, I can't take 10 days off work with 5 days' notice. Ben said the same when he came by that weekend. He runs his own contracting business. He had jobs scheduled. Mom kept repeating, "I'm sorry, it's already planned. It's paid for." Then I asked the question that mattered. "Why are Nathan's kids going and not us?" She went quiet. Her eyes shifted toward the hallway, like Nathan might appear at any second. "They're younger," she said finally. "They still live at home." "Mason is 24, I said. "He has his own apartment." She didn't answer. And that was when something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't an oversight. This was intentional. But the lies didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I started noticing patterns I had ignored before. When Nathan and his kids came over, they never acknowledged Ben. If I walked into the room, conversations lowered slightly. If Lily sat next to me, Claire would subtly shift closer to her dad. It wasn't open hostility. It was curated exclusion. Ben noticed it too. One Sunday afternoon, he stood beside me in the kitchen while Nathan's family filled the living room with laughter. "They act like we're guests," he muttered. "Guests pay less," I replied quietly. He exhaled through his nose. Ben confronted Mom once about it. She got defensive immediately. "You're reading into things," she said. "Blending families takes time." But there was no blending. There was just Nathan's family expanding into our space while ours shrank. The morning they left for Thanksgiving, I was getting ready for work. Mom came into my room. She hugged me. "I'll bring you back something nice," she said softly. I didn't hug her back. I stood there stiff, arms at my sides. After she left, I walked to the kitchen. The fridge was nearly empty. They had taken most of the groceries. Groceries I bought 3 days earlier. I stared at the empty shelves longer than I should have. Not because of the food, but because it confirmed something I hadn't wanted to admit. I wasn't just excluded. I was being used. And I was still trying to convince myself it was temporary. Thanksgiving Day didn't feel like a holiday. It felt like proof. Ben came over around noon. The house was silent. Too quiet. No smell of turkey. No music. Just an empty living room and a fridge that hummed louder than usual. We drove 90 minutes to our Aunt Addison's house. She had invited us because Mom told her we'd be alone. Addison was kind, polite, trying too hard to fill the silence with small talk. "How's work? Still at the medical office? You girls always were so responsible." Ben and I smiled where appropriate, nodded, chewed. But neither of us were really there. At some point after dinner, I checked my phone, and there it was. Mom's social media post. A photo at the Grand Canyon. Nathan's arm around her shoulders. Mason grinning. Tyler squinting in the sun. Claire leaning into Lily. Everyone positioned perfectly, like a postcard version of a family. The caption read, "So grateful for family and new memories." My chest tightened. Ben saw my face. "She post something?" he asked quietly. I handed him my phone. He stared at the screen longer than I expected. His jaw tightened slightly. Then he gave it back without saying a word. That silence hurt more than anger would have. When we got home that night, I sat on the couch and watched television with the volume low until I fell asleep. 2 days later, Mom texted, "We're having such a great time. Miss you." I didn't reply. She texted again the next day. "Are you okay?" I typed, "I'm fine." She sent a heart emoji. When they came back Sunday evening, Mom brought me a keychain from Colorado. She handed Ben a mug from Arizona. Nathan and his kids went straight to the living room to look through trip photos on his laptop. I went to my room. Something in me had shifted permanently. The next weekend, Mom asked if I wanted to go Christmas shopping with her. "I'm busy," I said. "With what?" "Plans." I didn't have plans. I just didn't want to pretend. But the real breaking point didn't come until a week before Christmas. Nathan came over for dinner. Mom had made roast chicken. The table looked warm, normal, almost convincing. After we ate, Nathan leaned back in his chair and looked at me. "Have you bought gifts for my kids yet?" he asked casually. I blinked. "Why would I?" He smiled like I was missing something obvious. "Because we're all family now. Family exchanges gifts." I looked at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "It would be nice," she said softly, "if you and Ben got something small for them. They're getting gifts for everyone." I asked the obvious question. "Are they getting anything for us?" Nathan answered. "They're younger. They don't have much money." "Mason is 24, I said evenly. "He has a full-time job. He makes more than I do." "That's different," Nathan said. "How?" He didn't answer. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe guilt. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe the tiny hope that if I made the effort, something would change. The next day I went to the mall. I spent $120. Money that was supposed to go toward fixing my car's brakes. A video game for Tyler. A makeup set for Claire. A watch for Mason. I wrapped them carefully. On Christmas Eve, everyone came over. Mom cooked. Candles lit. The tree glowing. After dinner, we exchanged gifts. Nathan's kids gave Lily clothes. They gave Mom a framed photo from the Thanksgiving trip, all of them together. Mason handed Nathan a new wallet. Tyler gave him a tool set. Claire said she had already given her dad his gift privately. Then it was my turn. I handed out the gifts I bought. Tyler opened the game. "Thanks," he said flatly, not looking at me. Claire glanced at the makeup, set it aside. Mason opened the watch. "It's nice," he said, then put it back in the box. And then, nothing. No one handed me anything. No one handed Ben anything. The room moved on like it hadn't just happened. Mom quickly suggested dessert. Ben stood up. "I'm leaving." "Stay," Mom said weakly. He grabbed his coat and walked out. I stood there a moment longer, heat rising behind my eyes. Then I went to my room. About 20 minutes later, Mom knocked. "Are you coming down for dessert?" "No." "Are you upset?" I didn't answer. She stood there for a moment. Then she left. 2 days later, Nathan came over while Mom was at work. I was making lunch when he walked in. "Can we talk?" he asked. I dried my hands on a towel. "Sure." He sat at the kitchen table like he owned the place. And that was when everything truly shattered. Nathan didn't raise his voice. That would have been easier to fight against. Instead, he spoke calmly, like he was explaining something simple to someone who just didn't understand. "I know blending families is hard," he began, folding his hands on the table. "But you need to be more patient." I leaned back against the counter. My heart was beating faster than I wanted it to. "Patient about what?" "My kids are adjusting," he said. "They're still grieving their mother. They're protective. You shouldn't take it personally if they're not warm toward you yet." I let that sit for a second. "Not warm?" I repeated quietly. "Nathan, they act like I don't exist." He exhaled through his nose. "That's dramatic." There it was. That word. Dramatic. I felt something sharp move through my chest. "I pay half the bills in this house," I said steadily. "I buy groceries they eat, and I'm treated like a stranger." He waved his hand dismissively. "Housing costs aren't relevant to this conversation." I stared at him. "How are they not relevant? Your kids benefit from the roof I help pay for." He leaned forward. "You're being transactional. That's not how family works." Family. The word almost made me laugh. "Is that why Ben and I were excluded from Thanksgiving?" I asked. He didn't hesitate this time. "The trip was about building my relationship with your mom and integrating the younger kids," he said. "Including you and Ben would have complicated things." My pulse thudded in my ears. "Who decided that?" "Your mom and I." "Your mom and I." Like we were children. Like we were an inconvenience to be managed. Then he said it. "Look," he sighed. "Your mom's older kids are part of her past. My children represent her future. That's where her focus needs to be." For a moment, I couldn't feel my hands. My throat tightened, but my voice came out steady. "So Ben and I are, what, temporary?" "You're adults," he said. "You don't need the same attention." I thought about the hospital room 7 years ago when my dad died. About my mom collapsing into my arms. About the nights Ben and I helped her keep everything together. And now we were the past? Something inside me snapped, not loud, not wild, but clean. You don't get to erase us, I said. He stood up abruptly, his face flushing. You're being disrespectful. No, I shot back. You're being delusional if you think this blending thing is working. I don't remember deciding to say the next part. It just came out. Your kids aren't the future. They're rude. They're entitled. Mason is 24 and acts like a spoiled brat in a house he doesn't pay for. Nathan's jaw clenched. You will not talk about my children that way. And you don't get to talk about my father's place in this family like you can replace him, I said, my voice shaking now. He stepped closer. You're hateful. I laughed once, but it sounded broken. Hateful? I moved back here to help my mom. I'm funding a household that doesn't include me. He pointed toward the hallway. You need to get out of my sight. That's when I said the only thing that anchored me. My name is on the lease. You can't kick me out of a house I pay for. And then the front door opened. Mom walked in. She froze when she saw us standing there, tension thick between us. Nathan immediately started talking over me. She called my kids spoiled and baggage, he said. She's poisoning this family. Mom looked at me. Her face didn't harden. It crumpled. Not angry tears. Not furious tears. Broken tears. She sat down at the table and put her head in her hands. Nathan kept talking, voice rising now. I will not tolerate this disrespect. I grabbed my keys. I didn't yell. I didn't slam anything. I just left. I drove to my friend Sarah's apartment. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just stepped aside and said, "Couch is yours." That night, staring at her ceiling, I replayed everything. Was I cruel? Was I wrong? Had I let months of resentment spill out too harshly? Or had I finally said what needed to be said? Nathan called me dramatic. But what's dramatic about wanting to matter in your own home? I kept seeing Mom's face when she cried, and I didn't know which hurt more. What Nathan said, or that she didn't stop him. I stayed at Sarah's apartment for 4 days. The first day, Mom called me 15 times. I didn't answer. Her text started soft. Please come home so we can talk. Then anxious. I'm worried about you. Then almost pleading. We need to fix this. I responded once. I'm safe. I'll come back when I'm ready. Ben called on the third day. She showed up at my place crying, he told me. I told her you're safe, but I also told her she needs to give you space. Did she defend him? I asked. He hesitated. She mostly cried. That wasn't an answer. On the fourth morning, I drove back to the house at 6 a.m. The sky was still gray, the street quiet. I used my key and walked in. The house felt smaller. I went straight to my room and started packing. Not dramatically, not angrily. Methodically. Fold, box, tape. I figured I would move in with Sarah temporarily, regain some control over my finances, regain air. Around 8 a.m., Mom knocked. Can I come in? Yes. She sat on the edge of my bed while I packed. She didn't speak for a full minute. Then softly, please don't leave. I kept folding. I can't stay in a place where I don't matter. Her breath caught. She started crying again, but this time it wasn't broken. It was ashamed. We fought, she said, the night you left, Nathan and I, until almost 3 in the morning. I stopped folding. He left, she continued. He hasn't come back since. He's staying at his own place. We're taking a break. I turned to look at her. Do you understand why I was upset? She nodded. I was ignorant, she whispered. I stared at her. How were you ignorant when it was happening in front of you? She rubbed her face with both hands. When your dad died, she said slowly, I went into a depression I never dealt with. I just kept moving. When I met Nathan, it felt like breathing again. I got so focused on not losing that feeling that I ignored everything else. Everything else, like her daughters. Thanksgiving wasn't an accident, she admitted quietly. Nathan suggested doing the trip with just the younger kids. He said it would be less tense. And you agreed, I said. Yes. The word hit harder than I expected. Why? Because I knew you and Ben didn't get along with them, and I didn't want the trip ruined. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. So the solution was to remove us. She nodded. I made a terrible choice. Are you sorry because it was wrong? I asked. Or because I finally called you out on it? She didn't answer immediately. Then, honestly, both. I sat down on the floor. I moved back because you said you needed help, I said. I gave up my apartment, my independence, and instead of being treated like your daughter, I was treated like a tenant funding a life that didn't include me. She covered her face again. I know. Then she said something that made everything worse. The bills weren't just high because of normal expenses. I looked up. Nathan had been borrowing money from me. My stomach dropped. How much? She swallowed. Over the past year, almost $8,000. The room felt very quiet. For what? His rent, his car, his kids' expenses. He said it was temporary. And he knew I was paying half the bills. She nodded. And he knew that meant part of that money came from me? She nodded again. That was the moment my anger shifted from hurt to clarity. He wasn't just excluding us. He was using her. Using me. I told him I'm not lending him any more money, Mom said quickly. That's part of why we fought. Ben came over later that morning. Mom told him everything. He didn't yell. He didn't comfort. He just asked one question. What are you going to do about him? She didn't have an answer. Over the next week, something else happened. Mason showed up. Mom was at work. It was just me and Lily. He knocked. When I opened the door, he looked uncomfortable. Can we talk? He asked. No, I said automatically. He stayed where he was. My dad said you hate us. I almost laughed. I don't hate you. I hate being ignored in my own home. He frowned. We didn't ignore you. You excluded us from Thanksgiving. He blinked. I thought you didn't want to go. My heart skipped. What? My dad said your mom invited you and Ben, and you said no. The air shifted. I pulled out my phone. I showed him the texts from November, where I asked Mom about the trip, where she admitted she hadn't told us. He read them. His expression changed. Can I screenshot this? He asked. No, I said, but I'll forward it to you. He gave me his number. After he left, Lily asked quietly, what was that about? I told her the truth. She looked confused. I thought you didn't want to go. That hurt more than Nathan's words. 2 days later, Ben called me. Tyler messaged me, he said. About what? He apologized for not getting us Christmas gifts, said Dad told him we celebrate differently and didn't expect gifts. I felt something heavy settle into place. Nathan had lied to his own kids. He painted us as distant and difficult. That way, they wouldn't question why we were being erased. Mom found out when Claire called her directly. Claire asked, why don't you like having us around? Mom was stunned. After that, Mom called Nathan. Her voice was steady. You lied to your children about mine, she said. He denied it at first. She didn't let him. That night, Nathan came to the house and banged on the door. Mom didn't let him in. You're ruining everything, he shouted. You can't build a family by erasing half of it, she said through the door. He left. The next morning, Mom sat us all down. Me, Ben, Lily. I'm ending it, she said. Silence. She looked exhausted, but clear. I let him convince me to abandon my own children. Ben didn't react dramatically. He just nodded once. What about the money? He asked. I'm not asking for it back, she said. It's a loss. Ben and I exchanged a look. This wasn't over. Not yet. You would think that once my mom ended things with Nathan, everything would immediately feel lighter. It didn't. The house was quieter, yes. No more weekend overnights. No more tension in the living room. No more pretending. But silence has a way of amplifying what's underneath. For weeks after the breakup, I walked around with this strange, hollow feeling. Not anger anymore, not even resentment. Just exhaustion. Because the truth was, even though Nathan was gone, the damage wasn't. One night, about 2 weeks after everything exploded, I was sitting alone in the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. The overhead light cast shadows that made the room feel unfamiliar. Mom came in quietly and sat across from me. I keep replaying it, she said. Replaying what? The night you left. Her fingers trembled slightly as she wrapped them around a mug of tea. I saw your face when he said you were the past. I didn't respond. She swallowed hard. And I didn't say anything. There it was, the part that hurt the most. It wasn't just what he said, I said slowly. It was that you let him. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't collapse into them. She held my gaze. I was afraid, she admitted. Of what? Of losing him. That answer cut deeper than I expected. Were you afraid of losing me? I asked quietly. The silence stretched. And that was the lowest point. Because for a second, just a second, I wasn't sure. That realization broke something in me. I went to my room that night and lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. I thought about moving out immediately, about cutting my financial support completely, about protecting myself the way Ben always did, detached, practical, decisive. But I also thought about my mom after Dad died, about how broken she had been, about how loneliness can make people accept less than they deserve. And I hated that I understood her. I hated that part of me still wanted to protect her. A few days later, something else happened that pushed me further down emotionally. Lily came into my room late one night. She sat on the edge of my bed and didn't say anything for a while. I had fun on the trip, she finally whispered. I waited. I didn't think about how you and Ben felt. Her voice cracked. I thought you just didn't want to come. That hurt more than any argument with Nathan, because my own little sister had believed the lie. It's not your fault, I said gently. But I should have noticed, she insisted. I should have asked. She was 14, still a kid, and yet she felt guilty for something adults created. I pulled her into a hug. We don't hate you, I told her. We never did. She buried her face in my shoulder. I don't want us to break, she whispered. That word break lingered, because we already had, just not completely. Financially, things were still tight. I reduced my contribution from $1,050 a month to $400 after Mom insisted I didn't need to keep paying half anymore. But even that decision felt heavy. Every time I transferred money, I wondered if I was helping or enabling. Mom picked up extra shifts. Lily got a part-time job at a grocery store. Ben came over more often, but he didn't stay long. There were moments at dinner where conversations stalled awkwardly. Mom tried too hard sometimes, overcompensating, apologizing repeatedly. "I'm sorry," she would say out of nowhere. "I know," Ben would reply flatly. I stopped responding to the apologies. Because forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a process, and I wasn't there yet. The real dark moment came when I found myself questioning something I never thought I would. If my mom could let someone call me the past, what did that make me in her life? Temporary? Replaceable? Disposable if love required it? Those thoughts scared me, not because they were dramatic, but because they were rational. And for the first time since moving back home, I realized something uncomfortable. Helping someone financially doesn't guarantee emotional security. You can give and still be sidelined. That realization changed me more than the fight ever did. I stopped trying to earn my place. I stopped trying to prove I was worthy of inclusion. I started observing instead, listening more, trusting less. And that's when the real turning point began to form. Not because Nathan apologized, not because Mom cried, but because the truth had started spreading beyond our house. And once truth starts moving, it doesn't stay contained. The turning point didn't come with yelling. It came with clarity. About a month after Mom ended things with Nathan, she came home one evening holding a folder. "I met with a financial advisor," she said. Ben and I looked at each other. Mom sat at the kitchen table and opened the folder slowly. "I was wrong about the money." "How wrong?" Ben asked. She inhaled. "It wasn't 8,000. Silence. It was 12. The number sat in the air like something solid. $12,000 over the course of a year. Money that was supposed to keep the lights on. Money that came from the household I was helping fund. Mom's voice trembled. I forgot about some smaller transfers. The advisor went through my bank statements. I felt cold. "He knew I was paying half the bills," I said. "Yes." "And he still took that money?" "Yes." That was the moment my anger transformed into something sharper. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was financial exploitation. Ben leaned back in his chair. "You should take him to small claims court." Mom shook her head immediately. "I'm tired. I don't want a legal battle." "He doesn't get to walk away with $12,000, Ben said firmly. "I already told him I won't lend him another cent." "That's not the same as accountability," Ben replied. For the first time since all of this started, I saw something different in Mom. Not shame, resolve. "I told him we're done," she said quietly, and I meant it. But the real shift didn't come from us. It came from Mason. A week later, Mom received a call from an unknown number. It was Mason. He asked to meet her for coffee. She hesitated, then agreed. They met at a small cafe near her work. When she came home that evening, she looked different. "What happened?" I asked. Mason confronted his dad. I sat up straighter. He said after everything fell apart, he started asking questions. Things didn't add up. Nathan had told his kids that Mom was too focused on her older children, that she couldn't commit to blending families, that Ben and I were hostile. But Mason had the forwarded text messages. He had proof. He went back to his dad, Mom said, and asked him why he lied. "What did Nathan say?" Ben asked. "He said he was trying to protect his kids from rejection." Ben scoffed. "By creating rejection." Mom nodded. Mason didn't buy it. He talked to Tyler and Claire. They realized they'd been fed a story. I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not because it fixed anything, but because the narrative shifted. For months, I had felt like the villain in someone else's version of events. Now the truth was circulating. Mason had apologized to Mom. He said if he had known the truth, he would have acted differently. He asked if there was a way to repair things. Mom told him gently, "Too much happened." A few days later, I received a message from Claire. It was short. "I'm sorry. My dad told me you didn't like us." I believed him. I read it 3 times. She was 16, old enough to form opinions, young enough to be manipulated. I replied, "I don't blame you." Tyler never reached out. I didn't expect him to. But here's what mattered. Nathan's control over the story had cracked. His children knew. The lies were exposed. And for the first time, I didn't feel erased. Mom started therapy through her workplace's employee assistance program. 6 free sessions. She told us she realized she had never processed Dad's death properly. "That's not an excuse," she said one night at dinner. "It's an explanation." Ben didn't soften immediately, but he listened. And I noticed something subtle. Mom stopped overcompensating. She stopped begging for forgiveness. She started taking responsibility without defending herself. That changed everything. Then Ben did something I didn't expect. He contacted Nathan directly. I don't know what he said, but 2 days later, Nathan called Mom. He offered to repay $3,000 if she agreed not to pursue court action. Mom was surprised. "Why now?" she asked him. I want to close this chapter, Nathan said. Translation: the truth was spreading. Reputation matters to men like him. He sent $1,500 up front, promised the rest in 2 months. Mom didn't believe he would follow through. But it was something. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but accountability beginning to surface. For the first time since this all started, I felt grounded. Not because Nathan suffered, but because the power dynamic had shifted. He could no longer control the narrative. And I was no longer the past. I was present. And I wasn't shrinking anymore. Nathan paid the remaining $1,500 2 months later, in cash. He insisted on handing it to Mom in person. She refused to let him come to the house. They met in the same coffee shop where she had met Mason. When she came home, she placed the envelope on the kitchen table and counted it in front of us. All of it, she said. There was no triumph in her voice, just closure. Later that evening, she told us he had apologized again. He claimed he had started seeing a counselor. He said he had been trying to replace his late wife instead of building something new. He admitted he had lied to his kids about us. He admitted he projected his fears onto our family. He asked if there was any possibility of trying again. Mom told him no. Firm, calm, final. And that was the end of him. But endings are rarely quiet in real life. Word had already begun to circulate among people who knew both families. Mason had confronted his father. Tyler had sided with him at first. Claire was caught somewhere in the middle. But once the financial truth came out, once it became clear that Nathan had borrowed $12,000 from a woman whose daughter was paying half her rent, the sympathy shifted. Not dramatically, not publicly, but socially. People talk. And men who build new families by quietly erasing the old ones don't look good under scrutiny. Mason called Ben one evening. I cut contact with him, he said bluntly. Ben told me later. Why? I asked. He refuses to take responsibility beyond saying sorry. He keeps blaming your mom for being too attached to us. I wasn't surprised. Men like Nathan don't lose control easily. They reframe. They justify. They minimize. But the damage was already done. Claire and I ran into each other at a grocery store in late summer. She waved. I waved back. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't warm. It was neutral. And honestly, that felt like the healthiest possible outcome. No forced bonding. No fake family. Just acknowledgement. Meanwhile, our house slowly recalibrated. Mom stopped working overtime once the repayment helped her stabilize her credit card debt. Lily kept her part-time job for a while, then reduced her hours during school exams. I continued paying $400 a month until May. But by then, something had changed in me. Not anger. Not resentment. Independence. In May, Sarah told me her lease was ending and she found a 2-bedroom apartment at a cheaper rate than what I had been paying Mom originally. You want in? She asked casually. I said yes without hesitation. Moving out didn't feel like running away. It felt like reclaiming myself. Mom helped pack. Ben carried boxes. Lily cried a little. I don't want us to drift, she whispered when she hugged me. We won't, I told her. And I meant it. Because this time I wasn't leaving in anger. I was leaving in strength. Ben got engaged in July. We had a small family dinner to celebrate. Just Mom, Lily, me, Ben, and his fiancée. No extra dynamics. No tension. Mom apologized again that night. Not in a dramatic way. Just quietly. I almost lost my kids, she said. Ben shook his head. You didn't lose us. You just had to wake up. Mom smiled through tears. They were different tears now. Not broken. Grateful. As for Nathan, he faded. No more banging on doors. No more calls. No more attempts to control the story. He moved on. Or at least he moved away. And the strangest part, I stopped thinking about him. The man who once told me I was the past became irrelevant to my present. Because the truth is, his power over our house only existed as long as we let it. And once the truth surfaced, it dissolved. It's been almost a year since Nathan stood in our kitchen and told me I was part of my mother's past. Sometimes I think about that sentence. Not with anger. Not even with bitterness. But with perspective. Because here's what I learned. You can contribute financially to a household and still be emotionally excluded. You can love someone deeply and still have to draw boundaries. And you can be someone's daughter and still demand to be treated like you matter. Moving out gave me more than independence. It gave me clarity. I fixed my car. I rebuilt my savings. I stopped transferring money out of guilt and started building a future for myself. Mom is different now. Not perfect, but aware. She asks more questions before making decisions. She listens when Ben or I push back. She doesn't dismiss discomfort anymore. And that change didn't happen because I yelled. It happened because I refused to shrink. Lily is older now. More observant. More protective. Sometimes she jokes that she'll interrogate any man Mom dates in the future. We laugh. But beneath it is understanding. As for me, I don't regret standing up to Nathan. I regret staying silent for as long as I did, because silence doesn't preserve peace. It just delays confrontation. Nathan thought I was the past, but the truth is I was the foundation. And when the foundation speaks, the structure shifts. If there's one thing I want anyone watching this to take away, it's this. Being an adult doesn't mean accepting disrespect in your own home. Being family doesn't mean being replaceable. And helping someone financially should never cost you your dignity. I didn't destroy a family. I protected my place in it. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do.